Hey guys, tonight we're checking into the most suspicious Airbnb in human history, the Medieval Inn. Not your local Holiday Inn Express with free Wi-Fi and sad muffins, but a creaky, candlelit nightmare where the beds are made of hay, the walls leak regret, and the smell. Somewhere between wet goat and foot-based soup. Before we dive in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy learning why our ancestors had trust issues and ringworm. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that gentle plague-era breeze, and settle in. Maybe tuck your feet under the blanket, just in case the imaginary rats are feeling peckish. Have you ever wondered what actually happened inside a medieval inn? Was the ale stronger than your will to live? Who snored in the next bed? And were they breathing the whole time? What was that thing they served for breakfast, and why did it blink at you? Did anyone survive the night without lice, robbery, or an existential crisis? And really, how did anyone make it to sunrise with their wallet, self-respect, and kidneys intact? Congratulations. You've just woken up in a medieval inn. Is 1374. Your head is pounding. Your tongue tastes like beef that lost a fight. And something in the corner just moved. You stumble in from the muddy road, greeted by a wooden sign swinging in the wind. If you can read, it probably says the King's Arms, but it might just as well say don't blame us. The innkeeper eyes you with suspicion, weighing your purse and your life expectancy. Your boots are caked in mud that might actually be something worse, and every joint in your body feels about 20 years older than it did this morning. You're shivering, hungry, and, if you're honest, more than a little desperate. As you wipe rain, or what you hope is rain, from your brow, you notice the door hangs at a heroic angle, squeaking in protest as you nudge it open. Inside, the flicker of a tallow candle casts dramatic shadows across the low ceiling, highlighting cobwebs that have achieved a kind of structural dignity. The inn's lobby, a generous word for a patch of sticky floorboards next to the hearth, is both welcoming and threatening, like being greeted by a large dog that may or may not bite. The innkeeper, bald, scowling, and shaped like a disappointed potato, sizes you up with the clinical precision of someone who's seen too many travellers and too few honest coins. He asks the medieval equivalent of, "How can I help you?" which is more like, "You're not with the tax man, are you?" followed by a cough that seems to rattle the windows. You muster your best smile, hoping to look non-threatening and possibly richer than you really are. The innkeeper grunts, glances at your mud-splattered cloak and immediately downgrades your lodging prospects. "One night?" he asks, making it sound less like an offer and more like a warning. In medieval times, nobody's planning a 2-week stay with spa access. Instead of a pen and paper, there's a splintery ledger with 3 names, a crude tally of debts, and a drawing that might be a horse, a demon, or the last guest who couldn't pay. There's no request for identification, just a quick check for visible boils, suspicious rashes, or obvious signs of plague. If you sneeze, you get a special look, half concern, half calculation, as if the innkeeper's wondering how much extra to charge for airing out the room after you die in it. You hand over your coin, hoping it looks shiny enough. The innkeeper tests it between his teeth, shrugs, and drops it into a box so heavy with locks you wonder if there's anything inside, besides IOUs and misplaced optimism. He gestures to the stairs, or what passes for stairs, a rickety assembly of wood and hope that creaks like an asthmatic frog. As you head toward your room, you pass through the common area, which is part dining hall, part bar, part livestock pen, and 100% louder than any place you've ever tried to sleep. There's a roaring fire with more smoke than flame, a bard mumbling tunelessly in the corner, and at least one chicken who appears to have checked in for the winter. All eyes briefly turn to you. Some are curious, some are jealous, and 1 or 2 seem to be calculating how easily your boots might fit someone else's feet. You finally reach your designated spot for the night, and the innkeeper hands you a rusted iron key. "Don't lose it," he mutters, "or you'll be sleeping outside with the pigs. They snore less." The key is mostly decorative, since the lock is older than the concept of personal privacy. You take a deep breath, inhaling a potent mixture of smoke, sour ale, and what can only be described as eau de medieval mystery. Your welcome is official. You're now a paying guest in a place that will test your immune system and your sense of humour. But for now, you're inside, you're sort of dry, and you're slightly less miserable than you were 10 minutes ago. Welcome to the medieval motel, where survival is the only amenity, and the best you can hope for is to wake up tomorrow with your purse, your shoes, and at least most of your dignity still attached. Good luck. Before you can say "one room, please," a wave of aroma washes over you. It's a special blend: sour ale, wood smoke, wet dog, and something you hope is just cabbage. Welcome to ambiance medieval style. You try to keep a straight face, but your nostrils have already staged an emergency evacuation. If you're the sort of person who enjoys a scented candle or the whiff of a freshly baked cookie, this is the kind of shock therapy that might haunt you all the way to the Renaissance. Every inn claims to have its own unique character, but here character arrives first and refuses to leave. The smell comes in layers, like the world's least appetizing lasagna. At the base, there's the reassuring funk of damp straw. This has probably not been changed since the king's last visit, and even then, only because the king's horse started sneezing. Above that, a smoky haze floats in the air, courtesy of the hearth's best effort to both warm the room and suffocate the guests in the process. The smoke never quite finds its way out, curling up in the rafters, mixing with the ancient grease splattered from decades of frying questionable sausages. It's less a smell and more a low-level threat. Adding to this symphony is the scent of medieval ale, brewed in the back, served in the front, and spilled everywhere in between. The floor is sticky with generations of foamy overspill, the tables are perpetually damp, and the air hums with a faint yeasty twang. Medieval beer isn't filtered, and neither are the stories that follow it. Even the mice look a little tipsy. There's a wet dog somewhere. There's always a wet dog somewhere. Sometimes it's under the table, sometimes by the fire, and sometimes it's just the innkeeper's coat, which hasn't been dry since the year of the Great Flood. Nobody seems to mind. In fact, you realise quickly that "what is that smell?" is less a question and more a daily mantra. The answer is usually best not to ask. You glance at the next table where a travelling merchant is unwrapping his dinner. Cheese so powerful it needs its own warning label and a hunk of bread hard enough to be used as a tool for medieval dentistry. The cheese alone adds another top note to the perfume of the room, sharp, tangy, and, if you're unlucky enough to sit downwind, absolutely unforgettable. Somewhere in the corner a pot of stew bubbles away, releasing clouds of steam infused with onions, turnips, and at least one unidentifiable ingredient. Maybe it's cabbage, maybe it's optimism. It's not unpleasant, but it is persistent, and the smell has soaked so deeply into the walls that you suspect the building itself would taste vaguely of stew if anyone were desperate enough to try. And of course, no tour of the medieval inn's scent profile would be complete without the people. Each guest brings their own contribution to the tapestry: sweaty labourers who spent the last 3 days walking in the rain, pilgrims who believe washing off the dust is a spiritual risk, children running around with sticky hands, and someone who's clearly carrying a basket of fish, for reasons you really hope are related to dinner. All of it mixes into an olfactory cocktail you can't escape, no matter how hard you try to breathe through your sleeve. There's no window to crack, no scented sachet, no discreet air freshener hiding behind the bar. The medieval solution to bad smells is simply to wait until your nose gives up, usually after the first tankard of ale. You take a seat and realise with a kind of awe that this is just the baseline. By morning you'll barely notice. Your brain will have shut down the complaint department, and you'll be able to focus on other challenges, like not catching a cold, a cough, or whatever that dog has. Welcome to medieval hospitality, where the memories and the odours linger long after you've moved on. Sleep tight and try not to inhale too deeply. There's no registration, no ID check. The innkeeper asks if you're carrying the plague, shrugs, then takes your coin and points to a room with fewer holes than the others. Privacy is theoretical. Forget the reassuring beep of a credit card reader or the ritual humiliation of your signature never matching your driver's license. In the medieval inn, the check-in process is simple. You hand over your coin, the innkeeper squints at it, probably bites it, and if it doesn't shatter or start crawling, it's accepted. The only thing that gets written down is a rough mental note of the new one in the corner. Looks like trouble, possibly edible. Questions about allergies, preferences, or whether you'd like a room on the quiet side of the building are met with a blank stare. The only amenity available is a key, sometimes made of iron, sometimes made of wishful thinking, and even that's reserved for special occasions. Most rooms have a latch on the inside, which is mainly decorative and offers about as much security as a prayer and a stern look. You do get one question though. You got the sickness? This is less out of concern for your health, and more about not having to fumigate your straw mattress before the next guest arrives. If you start coughing or sweating too much, the innkeeper may suggest you try the barn instead. It's cheaper, has more animals, and nobody will mind if you expire quietly in the hay. Once you've passed the still breathing test, you're assigned a room based on an advanced algorithm known as whatever's not already taken by someone louder or larger than you. He points you up the stairs, or if you're unlucky, to the annex out back, which is just a shed with more ventilation than walls. The stairs themselves are a test of faith. Each step creaks, groans, and shifts, as if the entire structure is powered by the collective willpower of previous guests who also survived the climb. Your room is numbered, not with digits, but with a carved mark, a painted rooster, or sometimes just a mysterious stain. The innkeeper explains, with the enthusiasm of someone who's had to explain this every night for decades, that if you get lost, just follow the draft. If you hear snoring, you're close. If you hear chickens, you've gone too far and may have accidentally checked into the livestock suite. There's no do not disturb sign, unless you count the suspicious puddle in the hallway. Your belongings are your own responsibility. If you ask about a safe, the innkeeper will direct you to the local church. Confession is the only thing guaranteed to be private, and even then, only if the priest is in a generous mood. There's also no guestbook. If you mention your name, it may be written down, just not by anyone official. Instead, you'll find yourself immortalised as that traveller who sneezed a lot, or the one who tried to pay with a foreign coin. Your presence is recorded not in ink, but in rumours, gossip, and whatever footprints you leave in the mud on the stairs. The check-in process concludes with a quick inventory of limbs, yours and the bed's. The innkeeper makes a mental note of whether you look likely to complain or worse, to leave without paying for your ale. He hands you a thin, scratchy blanket and mutters something about breakfast being when the rooster decides. As you shuffle off, he reminds you that quiet hours begin at never and end at dawn. Congratulations, you're now officially a guest, though guest is just another word for temporary survivor. Privacy is, at best, a rumour. Your room is as secure as medieval architecture allows, and your registration details are somewhere between the barkeep's memory and the bottom of the stew pot. Sweet dreams, and try to blend in. You're led to a small, splintery room with a straw mattress, one wobbly stool and a single candle. The wind whistles through the gaps in the wall. Your room comes with natural air conditioning and at least 3 species of spider. There's no turn-down service unless you count the wind enthusiastically flipping your blanket over. The bed is less a mattress and more a sack of straw that crunches, shifts, and occasionally pokes you with what you really hope is just dried grass. It's only slightly softer than the floor and, as you soon discover, a hotbed of biodiversity. As you sit down, a cloud of dust, and possibly the ghost of last week's guest, floats into the moonlight. Welcome to medieval luxury, where the best you can hope for is that nothing in your bedding is currently alive. Your only piece of furniture, a wobbly wooden stool, sits in the corner. It looks like it once belonged to a much larger, much sturdier chair that lost a fight with a blacksmith and a goat. When you gingerly test its strength, it wobbles in 3 directions at once, producing a creak that sounds suspiciously like a warning. You make a mental note. Sit only in case of emergencies, and never with both feet off the floor. The room is illuminated by a single tallow candle, generously described as romantic, but in reality, it's the kind of lighting favoured by horror movies and people who want to hide stains. The flame sputters, flickers, and produces more smoke than actual light, but at least it gives you something to watch while you contemplate your life choices. The walls, if you can call them that, are an uneven patchwork of wooden planks and historical optimism. Some are so thin you can see the shape of the moon outside. Others are held together by centuries of grime, and all of them let in a wind that has no respect for personal boundaries. This is open concept in its purest, coldest form. There's no insulation. The medieval innkeeper's idea of weatherproofing is to stuff the biggest holes with straw and hope nobody notices the rest. If it rains, you'll know. If it snows, you'll be even more certain. Soundproofing? Not even close. You can hear everything. The rowdy crowd downstairs, the mysterious thumping from next door, and the unmistakable chorus of livestock out back. Occasionally, you'll catch a snippet of conversation from another guest. A snore, a cough, or an argument over who actually paid for the stew. If you're lucky, you'll hear a lullaby. If you're not, it's probably a goat. As you inspect your surroundings, you meet your roommates, spiders. They keep to their corners, diligently managing the local fly population. If you're brave, you can count them. One in the ceiling, one by the window, and one with suspiciously long legs living behind the stool. By the end of the night, you might start naming them for company. Privacy is mostly an illusion. The door barely latches, and if someone really wanted to enter, they could knock politely, or just sneeze in the general direction of the hinges. The only way to ensure you aren't disturbed is to look as contagious as possible, or loudly announce that you snore and sleepwalk with an axe. Your luggage, assuming you brought any, gets its own special place, the floor, directly next to the cold draft and a collection of what may or may not be mouse droppings. There's no lock, no safe, just an unspoken agreement that everyone is too tired, or too superstitious, to rummage through someone else's things after dark. As you lie down, the straw mattress crackling beneath you and your single candle burning low, you realise this room is less a sanctuary and more a test of your ability to sleep through discomfort, to embrace uncertainty, and to appreciate how good you have it in the 21st century. If you make it to morning with all your limbs, your purse, and a reasonably positive outlook, you've conquered the medieval inn. At least until you need to use the bathroom. Surprise! You're not alone. You might share your bed with a random merchant, a chatty pilgrim, a snoring farmer, and a chicken who's clearly not on the guest list. Don't worry. Personal space is a modern invention. In the medieval inn, the idea of a single occupancy room is about as real as unicorns or good dental care. Beds are expensive, space is limited, and privacy is reserved for kings and people with contagious skin conditions. Tonight you are neither. Your bed, a generous pile of slightly musty straw, has become community property, and you quickly learn that booking a room is really just buying a ticket to an ancient social experiment. Your first roommate is the merchant, a man whose greatest talent is taking up more space than physically possible, and snoring like a church bell being chased by bees. He arrives late, trailing the scent of foreign spices and mild disappointment. His boots end up at the foot of your bed, and, within minutes, he's asleep, one arm flung dramatically across the mattress. If you ever wondered what it's like to sleep beside a walrus that talks in its sleep, wonder no more. Next to you is the pilgrim, and if there's one thing medieval pilgrims love more than collecting holy souvenirs, it's sharing stories. She spends her waking hours recounting her travels, her visions, her miraculous escapes from bandits, and, just when you're finally drifting off, her opinions on every type of soup in Christendom. She's also brought her own collection of relics, most of which rattle in the night, and all of which are apparently blessed against nightmares. You're not convinced, but at this point you'll take any protection you can get. Then there's the farmer, who's been working in the field since sunrise and smells like it. He collapses onto the bed in a heap, boots on, mud and all. He's asleep before he hits the straw, and his snores are so deep they may technically qualify as seismic activity. At some point in the night, he'll roll over and attempt to use you as an extra pillow. Accept your fate. This is the medieval equivalent of a weighted blanket. And just as you're getting used to the humans, you discover the chicken. No one knows where it came from, but there it is, roosting at your feet and eyeing you with the suspicion of someone who's seen too much. The chicken is silent, mostly. Occasionally it clucks softly, as if to remind you that in this room, everyone is just passing through. You're not entirely sure how many people, or creatures, are sharing your space, since the darkness hides as much as it reveals. In the quiet moments, you might hear the rustle of a mouse, the soft shuffle of feet on the floor, or the half-mumbled prayers of someone hoping for a dreamless sleep. Beds are for sharing, and the logic is simple. The more bodies, the more warmth. If you wake up sandwiched between the merchant and the farmer, consider yourself lucky. You're probably the warmest person in the building. Personal boundaries? Forget it. Elbows are everywhere. You spend the night negotiating for inches, trying to keep your blanket, your dignity, and at least 1 foot away from the chicken. The pilgrim mutters in her sleep. The merchant dreams of profit. The farmer rolls over and snores on, and outside the wind howls. You're part of a strange, uncomfortable, but undeniably human pile, snoring, shivering, and dreaming beneath a leaky roof. And as you finally close your eyes, it dawns on you. This is medieval hospitality at its most honest. Everyone's in the same boat, floating together through another long, uncertain night. Tomorrow, you'll all part ways with new stories, new bruises, and maybe a chicken-shaped souvenir. Until then, sleep tight. Just don't expect to move your arms. The mattress is a sack of straw so old it's composting. The pillow is a burlap sack. You lie down and immediately regret it as the bed creaks like it's writing its will. Sleep is optional. Survival is the real challenge. You can almost hear the mattress sigh with exhaustion. Centuries of travellers, farmers and merchants have slept here, and the straw has given up hope of ever being fluffy again. Lumpy doesn't begin to cover it. The sack beneath you is less mattress and more historical artefact, packed with a mixture of last year's hay, 2 generations of dust, and, if you're lucky, nothing alive with more than 4 legs. Some of the straw sticks through the rough cloth and pokes your back, as if reminding you that comfort is for the rich, or the delusional. The pillow, if you can call it that, is just a sad, wrinkled burlap sack, half filled with what might once have been feathers, but now feels suspiciously like gravel. It's the sort of thing that could be used to store onions or soak up spills, but in this case, it's your one piece of neck support. As you attempt to shape it into something sleep-worthy, you realise it's a losing battle. Every position leads to a new and exciting form of discomfort. The bed frame itself is a marvel of medieval engineering. 4 legs, 3 of which are the same length. The 4th one just tries its best. Every movement is accompanied by a creak that echoes through the room, making you wonder if tonight's the night it finally gives up and collapses in protest. Some previous guests tried to fix it with a wedge of firewood, now so worn down it's basically decorative. As you stretch out, your feet dangle dangerously close to the edge. The bed isn't quite long enough for anyone over 5 feet tall, so your ankles end up exposed to the chilly breeze slipping in through the door. The blanket, a single, threadbare sheet, offers all the warmth of a napkin and twice the holes. Every draught is a reminder that insulation, like proper hygiene, is not a medieval priority. The most immersive part of this sleep experience is the soundscape. Not gentle rain or soft lullabies, but a symphony of squeaks, shuffles and nocturnal negotiations. Mice patrol the rafters, your roommate snores in time with the wind, and every time you shift to avoid a sharp straw, you add your own percussion to the medieval bedtime orchestra. As for bedfellows, you're rarely alone. Tiny feet scurry beneath you, mice at best, something with more legs at worst. Fleas and bedbugs consider this mattress their ancestral homeland, and you're just the latest tourist. Itchiness is guaranteed. You try not to think about what's crawling around. but in the absence of sleep, your imagination fills in the gaps. Despite the discomfort, there's a certain pride in surviving a night here. After all, if you can endure the medieval bed, you can handle just about anything life throws your way. You toss and turn, seeking a sweet spot in the straw, but end up conducting a full archaeological dig through layers of ancient stuffing. Every new position is another micro-adventure. Discover the crunchy corner, escape the cold patch, avoid the suspicious lump. By midnight, you've resigned yourself to the reality of medieval rest. Comfort isn't the goal, endurance is. Your muscles ache in unfamiliar ways, but you're alive, you're indoors, and there's a roof, mostly, over your head. You close your eyes, clutch your burlap pillow, and drift into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of modern mattresses and soft, silent nights. When morning comes, you wake up stiff, covered in bites, and deeply appreciative of anything that calls itself a bed in the modern world. Congratulations, you've survived the medieval mattress. It might not be luxurious, but you'll have the bragging rights, and perhaps a new personal best for most consecutive hours spent itching. As you settle in, something else settles on you. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, they're everywhere. Your hair, your tunic, your sense of self-worth. Welcome to the original all-inclusive package. It doesn't matter how tightly you wrap yourself in your blanket, or how much you try to believe in personal boundaries. In the medieval inn, the most enthusiastic guests are always the smallest ones, and they've already claimed your body as prime real estate. You'd like to think of yourself as a brave traveller, but tonight you're the buffet. Congratulations. No need to tip the staff. The parasites will take it in blood. Let's start with the bedbugs, those persistent pioneers of discomfort. Somewhere deep in your straw mattress, they're plotting their nightly migration. At first, it's just a tingle, a slight suspicious itch on your calf. Then it's your neck, your wrist, your back. You try to ignore it, convincing yourself it's just the scratchy blanket. But soon you're engaged in a silent, futile dance, shifting, scratching, and bargaining with the universe. Bedbugs are survivors. Their family trees go back generations, probably to the first guest who ever checked in and regretted it. Not to be outdone, the fleas leap into action. These tiny gymnasts are experts at surprise attacks, bouncing from the mattress to your ankles with the energy of over-caffeinated popcorn. Fleas are a fact of life in medieval times, and they don't discriminate. Merchant or pilgrim, noble or peasant, everyone is fair game. And just when you think you've found a flea-free zone, one leaps onto your scalp with Olympic ambition, proving you'll never be truly alone again. Lice round out the welcoming committee. These industrious little creatures take up residence in your hair, working shifts that would impress any modern startup. If you're feeling philosophical, you could see it as a kind of companionship. After all, medieval folks used to believe a good infestation kept you humble. The more you scratch, the closer you are to sainthood, or at least to everyone else in the building. You look around the room and realise you're not suffering alone. The farmer on your left is scratching like he's signalling ships at sea. The merchant is picking at his beard, a look of quiet desperation on his face. Even the chicken looks annoyed, fluffing her feathers and pecking irritably at her own feet. In this inn, communal misery is the great equaliser. No one escapes the itch. It's almost a bonding experience. And don't forget about the occasional tick or wandering spider. They're less interested in you, but still available for moral support, or the occasional jump scare in the candlelight. You keep your blanket tucked tightly, only to realise that half the fun for these creatures is the challenge of finding new and inventive ways inside. Medieval hygiene doesn't help. Bathing is rare, laundry even rarer, and the only comb available is a shared wooden one hanging by the door, probably last used to clean the horse. You try to imagine a world with hot water, soap and insect repellent. But that sort of daydream is too radical for 1374. Instead, you mentally prepare yourself to just accept it. You're not sleeping. You're participating in a nightly ritual of gentle scratching, resigned sighing, and learning to appreciate discomfort as an art form. If you're lucky, fatigue wins out and you drift off in spite of the itch. If not, you join the unofficial night watch, counting bites instead of sheep. Tomorrow morning, you'll swap stories with the other guests, who found the most bites, who gave up and slept standing up, who's considering a move to a less populated ecosystem like a swamp. So sleep well, brave traveller. Tonight you're the 5-star feast in the medieval parasite's paradise. It's not the restful night you dreamed of, but you're definitely making history, in more ways than one. Downstairs, the common room is serving up stew. Nobody asks what's in it because nobody wants to know. If it's moving, just stir faster. If it bites back, you lose. The medieval inn's kitchen is a place of legend, or at least urban legend. You walk into the common room guided by the vague promise of dinner included with your stay. A promise that, like most things in medieval life, is open to interpretation. The cook's cauldron bubbles in the corner, releasing clouds of fragrant steam. Fragrant is a generous word, of course. Some nights the stew smells like onions and hope. Tonight, it's a mystery wrapped in a riddle, disguised as soup. The house specialty is pottage, a sort of ongoing stew that never quite leaves the pot, just evolves. Into what? That's not your business. New ingredients are added daily, sometimes hourly, while the oldest ingredients quietly dissolve or escape. The stew is thick, lumpy, and suspiciously crunchy. It's been simmering since last Tuesday, or possibly last harvest. There's a rumour that if you get to the bottom of the pot, you'll find last year's guest. You're handed a battered wooden bowl, cleaned recently, if you count a quick rinse in the rain barrel out back. The innkeeper ladles out a portion, dropping it into your bowl with a splash that leaves a new stain on your sleeve. Floating near the top is something that might once have been a turnip. You poke it cautiously, unsure if it's edible or part of the serving spoon. Your fellow guests tuck in without a word. In the medieval world, you eat what you're given. The alternative is hunger, and hunger is a powerful motivator for optimism. So you steel your nerves and take a bite. The taste is earthy, peppery, and possibly fermented. Every mouthful is an adventure, a challenge to your courage and your digestive tract. The stew's flavour is not so much a taste as an experience, one that lingers, follows you upstairs, and sometimes revisits you later in the night. Occasionally you'll spot something in the stew that might be meat. You hope for chicken, but chicken is a luxury. More likely it's a bit of pork, or a small rodent, or whatever was unlucky enough to be caught by the cook. Bones are included at no extra charge, along with a special garnish of wild herbs, mostly to cover up whatever else is in there. If you get a piece that's still chewy after 10 minutes, congratulations, you've discovered medieval protein. Chew with caution. For variety, the inn might serve bread on the side. The bread is hard enough to use as a weapon or a doorstop, but you soak it in your stew and hope it softens before your teeth surrender. Some guests try to trade their bread for extra ale. Others accept it as a sort of medieval jaw workout, one bite at a time. If you're still hungry, there's cheese. A wedge so pungent it should come with a warning label. The cheese is alive in spirit, if not in fact, and you learn quickly to cut around the green bits and not ask questions. It's all part of the mystery theme. Dinner is as much about socialising as it is about eating. Around the table, travellers share stories, barter news, and quietly assess who's likely to be first in line for the bathroom later. A bard sings in the corner, badly, and the atmosphere is thick with laughter, grumbling, and the occasional suspicious burp. It's the medieval equivalent of fine dining, if your standards are measured in calories and questionable choices. So you eat, you laugh, and you hope. By the time your bowl is empty, you're a little braver, a little less picky, and a lot more medieval. One more night survived, one more meal you'll never forget, or fully digest. You're handed a mug of ale, cloudy, sour, and possibly still fermenting. Don't worry, it's safer than the water, mostly. If you can't see the bottom, just close your eyes and pretend it's tea. Drinking in a medieval inn is less about taste and more about survival. In a world where the local stream is really just the village's communal laundry, sewer and unfortunate duck pond, water is something you approach with suspicion, reverence, and a backup plan for stomach trouble. The solution? Ale. It's not just a beverage, it's a medical precaution. Medieval ale comes in several varieties: weak, weaker, and why is it moving? The mug is heavy, chipped, and sticky from generations of optimistic rinsing. The colour ranges from pale brown to swampy ochre, depending on the brewer's mood and how many things fell in during fermentation. You might spot something floating in there. Could be a bit of barley, could be last night's fly. Nobody's keeping score. You bring the mug to your lips, steeling yourself. The first sip is a surprise every time. It's tart, a little gritty, with a finish reminiscent of damp hay and regret. The ale's slightly warm because nobody has heard of refrigeration, and if it fizzes, that just means it's still working out some issues. You try not to look too closely at the sediment collecting at the bottom. Some say it's vitamins, some say it's just medieval optimism. But here's the good news. Ale is safer than water because the brewing process boils out some of the nastier pathogens. Children drink it, the elderly drink it. Even the livestock, if you turn your back, will take a sip. It's not about getting drunk, although, let's be honest, sometimes that's a bonus. It's about staying hydrated and making it to morning without mysterious medieval stomach adventures. Occasionally someone offers you wine, usually a merchant or a traveller who wants to show off. Medieval wine is hit or miss. Some batches are genuinely decent, fruity and robust. Others are essentially vinegar with ambition. The really brave try the local spirits, mead, cider or firewater that doubles as lamp fuel. One sip of that and you understand why medieval songs are always so lively. Back at your table, the innkeeper refills your mug without asking. There's no menu, no flight of craft ales, just whatever's brewing in the back room, and a prayer that the fermentation gods are feeling kind. The communal jug is passed around, everyone swapping stories and illnesses in equal measure. You find yourself relaxing, the warm buzz of low-grade alcohol softening the edge of another long day. If you do get thirsty for plain water, the options are grim. There might be a barrel out back collecting rain, a wooden bucket hauled up from the town well, or a mysterious puddle in the corner. Each one comes with a free helping of microbes, so you eye the ale and take another swig, grateful for the minor miracle of boiled barley. It's not just about what you drink, but how you drink it. You toast to strangers and new friends, to surviving the stew, to making it through another night under a leaky roof. You clink mugs with people from every walk of medieval life, united by the need to stay hydrated and slightly inebriated. The laughter grows louder, the songs get worse, and even the chicken by the fire seems to bob along to the rhythm. So you raise your mug, cloudy though it is, and drink to your health, your luck, and the medieval immune system you're rapidly developing. One more gulp, one more night, and, if you're lucky, one more story to tell in the morning. Just don't look in the bottom of the mug. Some mysteries are best left unsolved. The fire crackles, merchants trade gossip, a bard butchers a popular song in the corner, someone's arm wrestling for a chicken leg. It's loud, smoky, and one fight away from spontaneous renovation. Welcome to the medieval common room, the bustling heart of the inn, and the only social network where you don't need a password. Just a willingness to be jostled, occasionally sneezed on, and sometimes challenged to a duel over who gets the last seat by the fire. There's no privacy, no quiet, and absolutely no such thing as me time. If you wanted to retreat into your own thoughts, you pick the wrong century. As you scan the room, you see a living tapestry of medieval life. Merchants with stained cloaks counting coins and muttering about tariffs. Weary travellers nursing their second mug of questionable ale. Local peasants leaning in close, swapping news about the harvest, the weather, and which neighbour's goat might secretly be a witch. In one corner, a game of dice is underway, with stakes ranging from copper coins to promises of future favours, none of which will ever be remembered by sunrise. The fire in the hearth is the unofficial mayor of the room. Everybody wants to get close, and everyone has an opinion about how it should be managed. It's surrounded by boots drying, cloaks steaming, and the inn's resident dog, who's mastered the art of looking pathetic until someone drops a scrap of stew. The heat is as patchy as the conversation. If you're too close, you risk roasting one side and freezing the other. Above the din, a bard attempts to serenade the crowd, strumming an instrument that's more string than music. He sings of knights and romance, his voice cracking like the floorboards. The regulars groan, the innkeeper winces, and a few coins clatter into his cup. Not out of appreciation, but as a subtle bribe to take a break. Meanwhile, in the corner, a group of travellers argue whether dragons are real, or just an excuse for missing sheep. The air is a thick soup of wood smoke, roasting onions, spilled ale, and the vague suggestion of livestock. Ventilation is courtesy of a hole in the roof, and a window jammed open with a turnip. Breathing in here is a workout for your immune system. The laughter rises and falls with every new story, many of them suspiciously heroic, all of them improved with each retelling. Every now and then tempers flare. A disagreement over a game, a spilled drink, or a chicken leg escalates in the blink of an eye. The room clears a space, and for a few glorious seconds, the inn transforms into a medieval fight club. Two farmers, sleeves rolled up, circling each other while the bard provides dramatic commentary. These skirmishes rarely end in actual injury, unless you count bruised egos and the occasional dented bench. But the real magic of the common room is its democracy. Nobles and peasants, foreigners and locals, thieves and tax collectors, all squeezed elbow to elbow, everyone equal in discomfort and need of distraction. Conversations overlap, alliances form over mugs of ale, and rumours ripple through the crowd faster than wildfire. Someone always claims to know a shortcut to the next town, a miracle cure for the pox, or which lord is secretly hiding a fortune under his chicken coop. By the end of the night, you'll have heard a dozen different accents, sampled 3 varieties of homemade insult, and perhaps learned a new dance from a shepherd who swears it's all the rage in France. The room thins as guests stagger off to their beds, laughter trailing after them. The bard plays one last mournful note. The innkeeper surveys the room, mentally calculating the cost of tomorrow's repairs, and you, traveller, get a front row seat to the greatest show in the medieval world. Ordinary people, living, arguing, boasting, and just trying to make it through another unpredictable night. Sleep will come eventually. Until then, soak up the chaos. In this common room, you are never truly alone. Nobody trusts the town crier, so the real news comes from the common room. You hear tales of haunted roads, plague outbreaks, and which lord's wife is definitely not at home tonight. Believe half of it, fear all of it. In the medieval inn, the gossip is thicker than the stew and travels just as quickly, usually whispered across the sticky tabletop, while the fire flickers and a bard strums in the background. Every traveller brings their own bundle of news, warnings, and outlandish tales, all of them shared with the confidence of someone who once met a guy who definitely knows a guy. If you want to know which village is feuding, who's about to be arrested, or where not to travel unless you enjoy mysterious disappearances, just linger near the loudest table and listen in. The first thing you hear tonight is a hushed discussion about the haunted bridge outside town. According to the carpenter, 3 travellers have vanished there just this week, and one returned only to speak in riddles and smell faintly of onions. There are rumours of ghostly lights, spectral dogs, and a knight who lost a bet with the devil. Everyone nods, solemnly agreeing to take the long way around tomorrow, even if it means another hour in the rain. You file this under plausible, right alongside the soup contains actual chicken. Plague rumours are the true currency of medieval conversation. You'll hear someone cough, and the room goes tense. In one corner, a merchant claims the next village over has been closed for business, by which he means the church bells haven't stopped ringing, and the undertaker's cart is doing double shifts. Naturally, someone else chimes in, "Oh, I heard it was just a bad batch of ale." There's always one optimist, but nobody refills his mug just in case. Then comes the real bread and butter of inn gossip. Noble scandals. You learn more about the local lord's marriage in 5 minutes than his wife has in 5 years. Tonight's news is that Lady Matilda was seen sneaking out of the stables with a visiting minstrel, and someone swears they saw the stable boy carrying a suspiciously large bundle wrapped in fancy linen. Is it evidence? Laundry? A plot to steal the family jewels? Doesn't matter. It's a story now, and tomorrow it'll have a dragon in it. There's also the usual wild speculation about who's plotting what in the nearby castle. Is Sir Geoffrey really building a trebuchet in his backyard? Has the Baron's cook been poisoning the stew, or is he just really bad at cooking? Did a wandering monk actually find a miracle cure for baldness, or does he just have a good hat? No rumour is too strange, too scary, or too stupid. The line between fact and fiction is not so much blurred as it is joyfully obliterated. The best part, everyone is a willing participant, even you. By the end of the night you find yourself adding to the lore. I heard a wolf ate a whole flock of sheep last winter, left only the wool. Or maybe... They say the inn's attic is haunted by the ghost of an angry tax collector. Nobody questions your credentials. In the common room, all stories are welcome, especially the ones that end with a warning or a punchline. You glance around, trying to remember which stories to trust. Was it the left table that warned you about the witch in the woods, or the right table that insisted the miller's bread can turn your hair green? Either way, you make a mental note. Travel in groups, check your stew, and never, ever ask about last year's wedding in the next village over. By the time you head to bed, your mind is racing with visions of haunted bridges, scandalous nobles, and invisible plagues. The truth, it doesn't really matter. In the medieval inn, gossip is both entertainment and self-defence, and as you tuck yourself into your itchy straw mattress, you realise you'll sleep with one eye open tonight, not because of bandits, but because you can't wait to hear what everyone's talking about in the morning. There are no locks on the doors, just hope and denial. You try hiding your money in your boot, under your straw pillow, or inside your mouth. Spoiler, the thieves have seen every trick. Medieval inn security is a concept that exists mostly in the imagination of people who have never stayed in a medieval inn. Privacy is already a fantasy. Safety is a group project, and the group is mostly failing. The doors to your room are about as secure as a bread crust. One hard nudge and you're open for business. If you want to keep your belongings safe, you'll need nerves of steel, the paranoia of a cornered squirrel, and, ideally, the ability to sleep with one eye open. Upon checking in, the innkeeper gives you a look that says, "Trust no one, not even me." The key to your room is more of a suggestion than a tool, and the latch is held in place by optimism and maybe an old piece of string. If you ask about a safe, the innkeeper just points to the church down the street. "Pray for your money," he says, only half joking. So you get creative. The classic move is to tuck your coin pouch deep into your boot, walking all evening with an awkward limp that tells everyone exactly where your valuables are. Or maybe you wedge your coins under the straw mattress, only to wake up at dawn and discover someone else's hand has already done some exploring. The boldest travellers hide their treasure in their mouth while they sleep, a move that guarantees at least one midnight panic when you wake up convinced you've swallowed next month's rent. Of course, the real professionals, meaning the thieves, know every one of these tricks. If there's a loose floorboard, it's already been lifted. If there's a pile of dirty laundry, someone's already rummaged through it before you even arrived. Medieval pickpockets are as skilled as they are relentless, and nothing is truly safe unless you're sitting on it. Even then, you may want to check for tiny hands with impressive reach. The common room is the real battlefield. When you step away for a refill of ale or a quick trip outside, you come back to find your cloak has a new owner, or your boots have wandered off for a better life. Sometimes you see someone wearing a tunic that looks suspiciously familiar. Do you accuse them? Of course not. You just glare, make a mental note, and add "watch your sleeves" to your growing list of medieval survival tips. For the truly desperate, some guests sleep with their coin purse tied around their neck, hugging it like a teddy bear. Others try to blend in, looking as poor, tired and contagious as possible. This method is surprisingly effective. Nobody wants to rob the guest with a hacking cough and wild eyes, just in case you're carrying more than spare change. The innkeeper is no help. He's seen it all and developed a strict policy of plausible deniability. If something goes missing, he shrugs, mutters about the risks of travel, and offers you another bowl of stew on the house, as if that makes up for your missing boots. Some even claim the innkeeper is in on it, splitting the loot with the town's unofficial welcome committee. It's all part of the ecosystem. Still, there's a certain camaraderie among the guests. After the first night, you swap stories about missing combs, vanishing hats, and that one time someone's chicken turned up wearing someone else's wedding ring. If you can laugh about it in the morning, you've already won. If you can't, you learn quickly, and next time you sleep with everything you own tied to your belt, or just accept that, in the medieval inn, possessions are temporary and good stories are forever. So tonight, as you tuck your remaining belongings under your lumpy straw pillow, remember, in the Middle Ages, what's yours is mine, and what's mine is probably missing. Sleep tight and clutch your purse close. The privy is out back, down a slippery path and probably haunted. It's a hole in a wooden bench with a smell that could melt iron. If you drop anything, let it go. It's not worth saving. Using the facilities in a medieval inn is less a private ritual and more a test of courage, balance and luck. It's the middle of the night, the common room is quiet, and suddenly your stomach remembers the stew. You bundle up, step into your boots, and brace yourself for the journey. There's no indoor plumbing, just a door that creaks open to a world of damp grass and ominous shadows. The moon is your lantern, the wind your encouragement, and every distant hoot of an owl a reminder that the bathroom is also the local wildlife's favourite hangout. The path to the privy is an obstacle course in medieval realism. It's never close, never dry, and never straight. You shuffle along, boots squelching through mud that's deeper than you expect and slicker than your sense of dignity. It's said that the path is intentionally treacherous, supposedly to keep out thieves, but really just to provide entertainment for anyone still awake by the fire. If you manage not to slip, congratulations. You've already outperformed half of last week's guests. Finally, you reach the outhouse, a squat, rickety hut made from leftover planks and medieval optimism. The door barely hangs on its hinges. There's no latch. Privacy, once again, is at the mercy of chance and a strategically placed broom. The walls are carved with a graffiti of centuries, names, warnings, crude drawings, and advice that ranges from pray for strong legs to never trust the stew. Inside, the air is thick enough to chew. The smell is legendary. A sharp, ancient cocktail of ammonia, decay, and the slow, eternal march of composting history. The pit beneath the bench is bottomless in spirit, if not in fact, and you make a silent vow to never, ever look down for confirmation. You sit gingerly on a wooden seat worn smooth by generations of desperate travellers. It's splintery, cold, and home to a few spiders that have long ago made their peace with human visitors. There's no toilet paper, of course. The closest thing is a pile of leaves, some scrap cloth, and if you're lucky, a handful of straw. All have seen better days. You ponder your choices. Do you risk the leaf with holes, or the cloth that might still belong to someone? It's a philosophical dilemma unique to medieval life, one that modern plumbing has mercifully rendered obsolete. Every noise outside makes you tense up. Was that a rat, a ghost, or the next guest impatiently waiting their turn? The innkeeper swears the privy is haunted by the spirit of a tax collector who perished waiting in line, but most guests are more afraid of the living, especially after dark. Dropping anything in the privy is an existential crisis. You might consider going in after it, but then you remember the tales of what else might be down there. Missing jewellery, long-lost coins, and the occasional adventurous frog. Let it go is the only advice worth following. No possession is precious enough to justify a rescue mission in these depths. As you finish up, you're left with a new sense of gratitude. For soap, for warm fires, for walls that don't smell like defeat. You make the slow, careful trek back to the inn, heart pounding with relief and pride. You survived the medieval bathroom break. It's a rite of passage, a story for the common room, and possibly the bravest thing you'll do all night. Sleep well, traveller. Tomorrow's breakfast is waiting, and trust me, you're going to want to wash your hands first. The innkeeper offers you a tub once this week's guests are done. The water is grey and lukewarm. Medieval wisdom says frequent bathing makes you weak, so most people simply pass. You stand there, staring at the wooden tub with the suspicion of someone who knows how many ways things can go wrong. It's seen better centuries. The iron bands holding it together are rusted, and the bottom is a patchwork of hopeful repairs. The water within is ambiguous. If you squint, it might have started clear, but by now it's picked up the history of every guest who came before you, and possibly their pets. There's a film on top that could be soap or just optimism. You decide not to ask. In the Middle Ages, bathing is less a cleansing ritual and more of a dare. The prevailing wisdom of the era says that water opens your pores, and open pores are an open invitation for disease, evil spirits, and judgment from your neighbours. Most people settle for a quick rinse of the face and hands sometimes. The truly daring might wade in, but only on feast days or after losing a bet. If you do accept the offer, the process is a production. There's no hot water tap, just a girl with strong arms and a resigned look, hauling bucket after bucket from the fireplace to the tub. Heating the water takes ages, so warm is a relative term and hot is reserved for the local blacksmith. By the time the tub is ready, half the village knows, and several bystanders have already commented on your bravery or poor decision-making. Soap is a rare luxury. If you're lucky, there's a chunk of something lumpy and brown that smells faintly of lard and strongly of yesterday's stew. It doesn't foam so much as grimly submit to the water, leaving you with a slippery feeling and the suspicion that you're just moving the dirt around. Medieval shampoo? That's called cold water and a prayer. Bathing is a social event, but not in the fun way. Privacy is in short supply, and there's always the possibility that someone barges in. Another guest, a nosy child, or once a goat. You become the evening's entertainment, a soggy spectacle, while everyone debates whether this much washing is wise, suspicious, or just downright unnatural. After all, if you wash too often, people start to talk. What are you hiding? Are you trying to tempt fate? The town healer insists that strong odours protect you from evil vapours. Only the very young, the very rich, or the deeply unlucky bathe regularly. For most people, a fresh tunic and a new layer of dust will do just fine. Even the logistics of drying off are a challenge. The towel, if you get one, is just a rag that's seen more action than the local militia. There's a brisk breeze blowing through the cracks in the walls, so modesty lasts exactly as long as it takes to catch a chill. You do your best, drying in record time before diving into your scratchy clothes, which now, in contrast, almost feel clean. When you finally emerge, flushed and red-faced, the regulars give you a wide berth, not out of respect, but because, in their eyes, you've become weakened by the ritual. You sneeze once, and 3 people cross themselves and suggest you try a tonic made from garlic and bad beer. You return to your spot by the fire, slightly cleaner, definitely colder, and with a new appreciation for modern plumbing. In medieval inns, dirt is just another accessory, and cleanliness is reserved for saints and newborns. So, as you lay back down on your creaky, bug-riddled mattress, remember, you've braved the tub and lived to tell the tale. Tomorrow you'll itch less, if only for a day. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where a bath is a risk and reputation is everything. As you try to sleep, you're serenaded by snores, wheezing, shifting animals, and the occasional mysterious thud from the attic. Every noise could be a rat, a thief, or just another guest losing a fight with their pillow. There's something about a medieval inn after dark that stirs the imagination. In the dim glow of your dying candle, the ordinary becomes questionable, and the questionable becomes absolutely terrifying. You close your eyes and try to settle in, but the mattress crackles, the wind whistles through the gaps in the wall, and the darkness seems to amplify every sound. First come the snores, a discordant choir, each participant determined to outdo the last. There's the deep, rumbling bass from the farmer 2 beds over, punctuated by the sharp, sudden honks from the merchant who apparently dreams of geese. Someone, somewhere, wheezes with the determined rhythm of a leaky bellows. It's oddly comforting in a way, knowing that at least a dozen people are still alive and breathing, unless of course that's just the dog. Next up, the animals. The inn is never truly free of 4-legged guests. A mouse scurries beneath your bed, pausing occasionally to scratch at something or nibble on a forgotten crumb. Out in the corridor, a dog shakes itself and flops down against the door, providing a security system only slightly more effective than the inn's actual lock. In the rafters above, you hear the faint scrabble of a rat on patrol, checking that all humans are in their proper places, and then the mysterious thuds. The first one makes you freeze, certain that a burglar, or worse, your innkeeper with another helping of stew, is on the prowl. The next is softer, as if someone is dragging something heavy across the attic floor. Maybe it's a barrel, maybe it's a treasure chest, maybe it's a restless ghost doing late-night redecorating. You remind yourself that ghosts aren't real, but that doesn't stop you from tucking your feet under the covers just in case. There's also the delicate symphony of creaks and groans as the building settles for the night. Medieval carpentry, you discover, is an ongoing negotiation between gravity, woodworm, and wishful thinking. Every time you shift on the mattress, a groan travels up the wall and out the door, joining the other noises in a chorus of domestic chaos. From the neighbouring rooms, you catch snippets of whispered conversation, muffled laughter, and the not-so-soft hushings of someone trying to calm a baby. Someone drops a cup, ceramic shattering, followed by a muttered curse in at least 2 languages. The door to the common room bangs open and shut as latecomers stumble in, guided by ale, adventure, or both. You try to identify the source of each sound, telling yourself that it's just the wind, or the dog, or a friendly local ghost. But your brain isn't convinced. Every so often, a draft from the window rattles the shutters, and you swear you hear footsteps just outside your door. You squeeze your eyes shut, counting the seconds between creaks, convincing yourself that morning will come soon. In time, the noises blur together, forming a kind of medieval white noise, strange, chaotic, but oddly soothing in its own way. There's a comfort in knowing you're not alone, that everyone here is fighting their own battle with the night, the bedbugs, and the chorus of unseen creatures. Eventually your body gives in to exhaustion, and you drift off, serenaded by the symphony of medieval inn life. If you're lucky, your dreams will be quieter than your reality. If not, at least you know you won't be the only one awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if that last thud was the wind or something else entirely. Sleep well, brave traveller, in the morning you can laugh about it. Assuming the chicken lets you, in the flickering firelight stories are swapped. Some are heroic, most are horrific, and all are just plausible enough to keep you awake. Ghosts, bandits, lost fortunes. It's medieval Netflix, but with more lice. There's nothing quite like the common room after dinner. The air is thick with the smells of stew and smoke, and the crackle of the fire mixes with the buzz of half-remembered legends. Someone slides a stool closer to the flames, shooshing the room with a dramatic wave of the hand. This is prime storytelling territory, where the rules of reality are just gentle suggestions, and the only fact-checkers are a few chickens and a deeply sceptical goat. The first tale is always a crowd-pleaser. A merchant describes in vivid detail the time he escaped a band of highwaymen by hiding in a barrel of pickled onions. His listeners gasp at the right moments, and someone even pretends to faint at the part about the smell. The truth? He probably just got lost on the wrong road and blamed it on bandits to preserve his dignity. But in the world of the medieval inn, plausibility is optional. The audience nods along, eyes wide, and the merchant basks in his 15 minutes of heroic fame. Next comes the ghost story. No fireside gathering is complete without one. The oldest guest, hunched by the hearth, begins with a warning. Don't stray too close to the crossroads at midnight. What follows is a tangled saga of flickering lights, spectral voices, and a phantom dog with glowing eyes and a bark that chills the soul. The storyteller's voice dips and rises with the flames, and even the bravest guest feels a cold shiver run down their back, part terror, part draught from the window. You know it's just a story, but you make a mental note to avoid crossroads, midnight, and probably dogs. Someone else chimes in with a cautionary tale about cursed treasure. Hidden under a ruined tower guarded by the spirit of a wronged knight, the fortune promises glory and untold wealth to anyone brave, or foolish, enough to claim it. A younger guest claims his uncle's neighbour's friend saw the coins once shimmering in the moonlight, but by morning all that remained was a chicken feather and a pair of muddy footprints leading nowhere. The inn erupts in laughter, though more than a few eyes dart nervously toward the shadows. Every so often the stories veer into pure horror. A farmer recounts the tale of the screaming turnip, a vegetable that howled whenever anyone tried to cook it, causing 3 families to move and a dog to develop a nervous twitch. Someone else tells of bandits who disguise themselves as travelling monks, blessing villages with one hand and robbing them with the other. The lesson, apparently, is to trust no one, eat no turnips, and never accept a blessing from a man with suspiciously soft hands. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are tales of unlikely heroes, a washerwoman who outwitted a tax collector by hiding his ledger in the bread oven, a goose who saved a village from a fire by honking loud enough to wake the blacksmith, and a travelling peddler who won a fortune by gambling on a 2-headed pig. These stories, a strange blend of hope and hilarity, remind everyone that sometimes fortune favours the absurdly brave. The fire burns lower, the shadows stretch longer, and one by one guests drift toward their lumpy beds, heads full of curses, treasures, and turnips with strong opinions. You tuck yourself in, both soothed and unsettled, wondering which stories are true and which are just clever excuses for missing livestock. In the medieval inn, every night is an episode, every guest a character, and the plot twists never end. Sleep well, and if you hear a strange noise in the night, just remember, it's probably the wind, or maybe the turnip. Rats scurry along the beams, mice investigate your shoes, and a particularly bold weasel claims a spot by the fire. The inn is alive in every sense. You consider sleeping with one eye open. In the medieval inn, pest control is less a battle and more a diplomatic arrangement. Every creature, large or small, has staked a claim to some corner of the building. The humans pay for their beds with coins and stories. The animals pay with chaos and relentless curiosity. And somewhere in between, you, the unsuspecting traveller, try to claim just enough territory to survive the night. Let's start with the rats. They're the real landlords here. You hear them first, claws clicking along the ceiling beams, tiny acrobats performing midnight parkour. Sometimes you catch a pair of shining eyes peering down at you, measuring whether you look edible or just entertaining. If you leave bread on your bedside table, you might wake up to find it gone. Or, worse, replaced with something the rat thought you'd appreciate more, like a well-gnawed chicken bone or a mysterious pebble. Mice are the local ambassadors. They don't cause as much damage, but they're everywhere, darting across the floor, sniffing at your pack, and occasionally staging a daring rescue mission for a forgotten crumb. The bravest mice have no fear, weaving through a maze of boots and cloaks, utterly unimpressed by the drama of human life. There's always at least one who thinks your sock is the perfect place for a midnight nap. Then there's the weasel, a living symbol of medieval resilience. Most nights it's just a rumour, but tonight the legend is real. The weasel slips into the common room with a confidence that suggests it's the only creature actually in charge. The innkeeper pretends not to see it, and the regulars simply slide their bowls away as it noses closer to the fire. With its glossy coat and twitching nose, the weasel is half mascot, half menace. Sometimes it even helps keep the rat population in check, though whether out of hunger or spite is anyone's guess. But why stop at mammals? The insect population is thriving too. Fleas and lice, of course, are permanent residents, never paying rent, never leaving and always happy to welcome a new guest. Spiders hang from the rafters like tiny silent sentries, keeping the flies in line and occasionally giving someone a surprise to remember. The candlelight reveals their delicate webs glinting in the corners, a testament to their centuries-long lease. If you thought the barnyard was outside, think again. Occasionally a chicken or duck strays indoors, pecking at spilled grain and leaving a little good luck behind. There's a rooster who thinks he's an alarm clock and a goat who's been banished for trying to eat someone's boot. Again, each animal has its routine, and if you disturb them, you'll be met with an indignant squawk, honk, or, in the goat's case, a calculated attempt at sabotage. All these creatures add a layer of unpredictability to the night. Was that a rat tugging your blanket, or just the farmer next to you rolling over? Is the scratching at the window a mouse, or is it the weasel plotting its next move? You try to sleep, but your ears are attuned to every shuffle, squeak and feathered flap. In the morning, the inn is quiet, the pests retreating to their secret hideouts. You survey the damage, a missing crust of bread, a small hole in your tunic, and the knowledge that you've survived the wildest house party in history. Medieval inns aren't just places to rest. They're ecosystems in motion, where every guest, human or not, plays a part. So tonight, as you close your eyes and clutch your belongings, remember, you're never truly alone. In the medieval inn, everyone gets a bed. Sometimes, whether they want it or not. The innkeeper is gruff, the serving maid is immune to flirting, and the cook is possibly a retired highwayman. If you complain about the soup, you get more soup. This is the way. In a medieval inn, the staff are a central part of the experience. Sometimes in the same way a thunderstorm is part of the experience when you forget your umbrella. The innkeeper runs the show with a glare honed by decades of fending off drunks, tax collectors and wayward livestock. His motto is simple: pay first, sleep later, complain at your own risk. His only display of emotion is a grunt, which might mean anything from welcome to try not to die on my floor. The serving maid, there's always one and she's usually quicker, smarter and more sarcastic than anyone in the room, moves through the chaos with the focus of someone who's seen it all and wishes she'd seen less. Orders are taken at a speed that suggests she's auditioning for a tournament, and any attempt at charming conversation is met with a blank stare or a dry quip that leaves even the most determined troubadour questioning his life choices. As for the cook, nobody's quite sure about his past. Rumour has it he once held up a merchant caravan single-handed, then retired to the kitchen for a quieter life. At least that's the version he tells guests who ask why their stew is crunchier than usual. He's rarely seen outside his smoky domain. When he emerges, apron stained and hair wild, the room goes silent. People have learned not to criticise the food. If you say it's too salty, you get an extra ladle and a lecture about flavour. If you suggest it's too bland, he'll season your bowl with something mysterious, and watch to see if you flinch. The rest of the staff rounds out the cast of characters. There's the stable boy, who looks about 12 but probably knows more medieval curse words than the local priest. He's in charge of the animals, the mud, and occasionally retrieving guests who lose their way to the privy. If you need anything moved, fetched, or swept under a rug, he's your man, provided you slip him a copper coin, and don't ask where he hides the broom. Then there's the resident handyman, sometimes called a porter, sometimes called Hey You. He's responsible for everything else: chopping firewood, patching leaks, wrangling drunks, and, when things get slow, telling stories about the time he nearly caught a rat this big. The rat always gets away, but the story gets better every year. Hospitality here isn't about service with a smile, it's about survival with a system. The staff keep the place running, not out of love for the job, but because someone has to. Their faces are as familiar as the stains on the walls, and their rules are as unbreakable as the bread. If you want more soup, just ask. Your bowl will overflow, whether you like it or not. If you want a softer mattress, you'll get an extra handful of straw and a raised eyebrow. Yet, underneath the rough edges, there's a strange kind of care. If you fall ill, the maid will bring you the strongest ale, the handyman will find a blanket, And even the innkeeper might grunt in a slightly less threatening tone. They've seen every type of traveller and survived every disaster. In their own way, they're the keepers of safety, sanity, and the occasional bar fight. So as you drift off to sleep, the last thing you hear is the clatter of bowls, the muttered curses from the kitchen, and the gentle snore of the stable boy by the door. Medieval hospitality isn't warm or welcoming, but it gets the job done. And honestly, you'll remember these faces long after you've forgotten the soup. If you don't pay, you don't stay. Sometimes even if you do pay, you don't stay. Your continental breakfast is last night's bread and a hopeful smile. Tipping is not customary. Bribery, however, is. There's no such thing as a free night at a medieval inn. In fact, there's barely such a thing as a guaranteed night, even if your purse is as fat as the innkeeper's scowl. Before you can even set your muddy boots near the hearth, the innkeeper's hand is out, palm up, ready to test your coin. Medieval hospitality is a business transaction, and the business model is pay now, question everything later. The payment ritual is conducted in full view of everyone, as much a warning as a welcome. Coins are inspected, bitten, and sometimes weighed in the palm with the seriousness of a judge passing sentence. Any attempt to bargain for a better rate is met with a look that says, "Sure, you can haggle, if you want to sleep in the goat shed." If you're lucky, your coin is accepted and you're granted access to a mattress with only minor infestations. For those who run short on money, creative solutions abound. Maybe you can barter a spare tunic, a good story, or your services hauling buckets for the bathhouse. But be warned, if you promise to work, you'd better mean it. The innkeeper has a memory like a hawk and a talent for extracting value from every guest. Miss a payment, and you'll find your luggage has sprouted legs and your boots are now decorative seating in the common room. As for perks, they're defined very loosely. Breakfast is included technically. What you'll find is a slab of bread, hard enough to use as a weapon, and maybe, if fortune smiles, a scraping of last night's stew or a lump of cheese with more history than flavour. Coffee is a distant dream. The only hot drink is thin ale or herbal infusion, which tastes suspiciously like boiled dandelion roots. Sometimes, a cheery child delivers your food with a grin. Sometimes, it's the innkeeper's dog who expects a tip in the form of your leftovers. Tipping, in the modern sense, doesn't exist. If you try to slip a coin to the serving maid, she'll look at you like you've offered her a frog. But bribery? Now, that's a time-honoured tradition. Need an extra blanket? Slip a coin under your bowl. Want your boots actually near your bed and not in the stables? Compliment the cook's stew, and then slide a shiny penny across the table. Bribery is the medieval way of saying, "Please don't let the rats eat my shoes tonight." There are other perks too, depending on your definition. If you've paid handsomely, the innkeeper might grant you the least drafty room or a mattress with more straw than holes. If you're a regular, you might get a wink and a warning about which stew pot to avoid. The true VIPs, the merchant who always pays in advance, the bard who entertains for his supper, the mysterious traveller who tips in foreign coins, find the staff just a little more attentive, or at least a little less likely to accidentally spill ale on their lap. Still, there's an ever-present sense that, in the end, nothing is truly guaranteed. One stormy night, you might return to find your bed occupied by a group of travellers who paid just a little more, or who got there first. Your reservation is written in the dust on the floor, easily erased and quickly forgotten, so you pay up front, you cross your fingers, and you cling to your breakfast bread like it's gold. In the medieval inn, survival isn't just about dodging lice and mystery meat. It's about staying one step ahead of the ever-changing price of comfort. Sleep tight, traveller, and remember, in the morning, your perk might just be the memory of a night when nothing went missing, except, perhaps, your sense of security. Tonight's show, a bard who knows two chords, a drunk knight challenging the furniture, and, on special occasions, bear baiting in the yard. The medieval inn, come for the shelter, stay for the chaos. Every medieval inn has its own version of evening entertainment. You might hope for a quiet fireside, maybe a tune or two and some gentle laughter. Instead, You get front row seats to a spectacle that combines street theatre, amateur wrestling, and the occasional near-death experience. The only tickets required are a thick skin and the ability to dodge flying bread. The bard is the first act. He's armed with a battered lute, 3 verses to his name, and a smile so hopeful you almost feel bad when he butchers yet another classic ballad. His repertoire consists mainly of drinking songs, heroic epics with suspicious gaps in the story, and one original tune about losing his shoes in a mud puddle. His voice wavers between earnest and in need of rescue, and yet, somehow, he's the safest act of the night. If you're lucky, he'll take requests. If you're not, he'll take hostages until someone throws a coin or a turnip his way. Before long, the music is drowned out by shouts as the nightly brawl erupts. It always starts innocently enough. A spilled ale, a dice game gone sideways, or a heated debate over whose turn it is to sleep closest to the fire. Suddenly tables scrape, chairs fly, and someone's hat is claimed as a trophy. The local champion, usually a burly farmer with strong opinions on chickens, faces off against a travelling knight who's had one too many. Furniture is the first casualty, followed by dignity and the occasional mug. The staff takes it all in stride. The serving maid weaves through the chaos like a dancer at a particularly aggressive wedding, collecting empty bowls and dodging elbows. The innkeeper sighs, rolls up his sleeves and waits for the crowd to tire itself out. Fights are so common here, there's an unwritten rule. If you can still sing or stand at the end, you're welcome back tomorrow. Every so often, the night's headline event takes place outside, under the flickering lanterns of the inn-yard. Bear baiting, a questionable pastime by modern standards, but a medieval crowd-pleaser, is announced with a dramatic flourish. The inn's resident bear, there's always a rumour of one, is led out, looking mildly annoyed and more interested in snacks than combat. The crowd roars, bets are made, and everyone jostles for a better view. Whether the bear is a mangy dog in a borrowed hide or an actual surly beast depends on the inn's finances and the ambition of its proprietor. Other nights, the entertainment takes unexpected turns. You might witness an impromptu juggling act with stale bread, a mock trial for someone accused of cheating at stew, or a dance-off between 2 shepherds arguing over whose sheep are better trained. Sometimes the local priest joins in, giving a fire and brimstone sermon to the drunkest audience in Christendom. No one listens, but everyone applauds. Through it all, the inn pulses with life, noise, and a kind of joyful mayhem. Travellers from distant lands tell tall tales, bards swap tunes and insults, and the line between performance and reality blurs until it vanishes completely. Every guest becomes a participant, whether you meant to or not. As the night winds down, the bard limps off to nurse his wounded pride. The knight hugs his new chair, and the bear, real or imagined, returns to its corner, unimpressed by humanity's antics. You, meanwhile, have had the privilege of surviving another night's entertainment. Maybe you even laughed once the bruises stopped throbbing. Sleep tight, traveller. Tomorrow promises more chaos, and if you're lucky, you'll live to applaud, or duck, another day. Someone is always coughing, sneezing, or displaying a suspicious rash. Germ theory doesn't exist. You sleep next to Typhoid Tom and hope your immune system is feeling brave. Staying healthy in a medieval inn is a little like juggling knives while blindfolded. Your odds of success depend mostly on luck, and everyone around you is ready to hand you another knife. The concept of hygiene is somewhere between optimistic and mythical. Soap is rare, hand-washing is considered an eccentric hobby, and the phrase "cover your mouth" has yet to make its way into polite society. As you settle into your scratchy bed, the background noise of medieval life plays out in full surround sound. One guest hacking up something alarming, another sniffling with the intensity of a broken bellows, and somewhere in the darkness the unmistakable wet wheeze of someone who's seen better centuries. If you're lucky, the night's soundtrack is merely bronchial. If you're not, you get the pleasure of trying to sleep through the world's longest sneezing fit. Illness is everywhere, just a fact of medieval life. The word plague is tossed around almost casually. If someone's pale, feverish, or covered in spots, the prevailing wisdom is to wrap them in more blankets, feed them extra stew, and if all else fails, move them a little further from the fire. Distance is the only real medicine, though it rarely works, especially when you're sharing a mattress with 3 strangers and a chicken. There's always one guest with a mysterious rash, proudly displayed to anyone who asks, and many who don't. Probably nothing, he insists, scratching with enthusiasm. The rest of the room scoots away by half an inch, hoping that's enough to avoid waking up with a matching set of spots. Your own skin starts to itch in sympathy, a psychological side effect of medieval close quarters, and then there are the injuries. Life on the road is rough. Sprained ankles, bruised knees, mystery lumps, and the occasional black eye from a barroom misunderstanding. Bandages or whatever's on hand, strips of linen, scraps of tunic, or the innkeeper's least favourite napkin. The local remedy for everything from fever to fractures is a stiff drink and a long story about someone who once survived worse. The common room is a living museum of limping, groaning, and swapping home remedies. Just put some garlic on it and walk it off. Medical professionals, if you can call them that, are a mixed bag. Maybe there's a wandering barber surgeon in the next town, ready to prescribe bloodletting for your stubbed toe. Or perhaps the serving maid doubles as an herbalist, doling out dubious potions from behind the bar. For the truly desperate, there's always the village-wise woman. Her advice is 90% superstition and 10% try not to die before morning. Sharing a room with the sick and injured is a medieval rite of passage. You lie awake, counting coughs, and praying that whatever your roommate has isn't airborne. You wonder if sleeping with your mouth closed really makes a difference, or if you should just accept your fate and start practicing your own dramatic cough. The only comfort is that statistically, most people survive at least until breakfast, and if you do get sick, you'll be right at home. Everyone's in the same germ-infested boat. In the morning, you wake up feeling about the same, which is a minor miracle. Maybe your immune system is tougher than you thought. Maybe it's the ale or the garlic or the sheer force of will required to get through the night. Either way, you join your fellow survivors in the common room sharing a breakfast of hard bread and harder luck. So here's to you, brave traveller, survivor of the medieval inn, immune system tested and hopefully undefeated. Sleep well tonight, and may your only souvenir be a good story, not a new rash. Relationships bloom fast, usually after the 3rd mug of ale. Secrets are exchanged even faster. Sometimes the real entertainment is watching who leaves whose room at dawn. In the medieval inn, romance and intrigue waft through the smoky common room like wood smoke, inescapable and sometimes a bit suffocating. With everyone packed together in close quarters, personal boundaries melt away faster than a block of butter by the fire. The result? Late-night confessions, forbidden trysts, and alliances as temporary as the soap in the bathhouse. There's a certain magic to medieval matchmaking. Arranged marriages are common, but that doesn't mean people don't try their luck at spontaneous courtship. The travelling bard, for example, might catch the eye of the merchant's daughter, serenading her with a slightly off-key tune about eternal love and freshly baked bread. The local blacksmith, still stained with soot, finds himself chatting up the miller's wife, who's already on her 2nd ale and her 3rd scandalous story of the evening. No one cares much about formal introductions, just whether your parents have enough sheep to impress the neighbours. If you're here on business, don't worry. Romance is not a requirement, but it's hard to avoid getting swept up in the drama. Every flicker of the candlelight is another opportunity for a sly glance, a hushed conversation, or a chance encounter by the kitchen door. Occasionally a not-so-subtle wink is exchanged across the room, followed by a shuffle of benches and a clatter of mugs as new alliances form. The innkeeper pretends not to notice, but keeps a careful ledger, both of unpaid bills and particularly memorable rendezvous. Scandal is the inn's true currency. News of who's sharing a bed travels faster than the plague, and with about as much subtlety. If you find yourself the subject of whispers, congratulations, you're officially part of the night's entertainment. Did the visiting nobleman really sneak off with the mayor's wife? Or was that just a case of mistaken identity and very similar hats? Did the handsome knight propose to the brewer's daughter, or just ask for another round of ale? By breakfast, the stories will have evolved, retold and embroidered by every tongue in the room. Of course, love in the medieval inn is rarely subtle or quiet. Furniture, not designed for passionate embraces or late-night declarations, bears the brunt. At least one stool will lose a leg, a bench will groan in protest, and the creaky beds will provide a running commentary that no one can quite ignore. In the morning, the handyman surveys the damage with a sigh and a muttered, "At least it wasn't the fireplace this time. It's not all affairs and flings." For some guests, the inn is a backdrop to long-term courtship, a neutral ground for negotiations between families who argue about dowries and the quality of last year's harvest. Over bread and cheese, marriage contracts are hammered out, promises are made, and sometimes, just sometimes, genuine affection grows in the cracks between negotiations. Still, nothing sets tongues wagging like a good midnight scandal. The truly bold might attempt a secret meeting in the barn, or slip away behind the stables, hoping the resident goat is less judgmental than the gossiping crowd inside. But privacy is as rare as a soft mattress, and there's always someone peeking through the shutters, ready to report back to the innkeeper or, worse, your mother. When the sun rises, it's a parade of sheepish grins, hurried goodbyes, and the collective amnesia of a room full of people who all saw nothing and know even less. Benches are righted, furniture is patched, and the common room fills with laughter as new rumours take root. In the medieval inn, love is quick, scandal is inevitable, and the only thing longer lasting than the rumours is the creak of the beds. Sleep well, and if you're lucky, may your secrets survive until morning. The rooster crows, the sun pokes through the cracks, you have a headache, a stomachache, and a new appreciation for beds that don't bite. Breakfast is bread, stew, and existential dread. There's something uniquely medieval about waking up in an inn after a night of questionable decisions, mysterious thuds, and stew that might have contained more ingredients than your average apothecary. Your mouth feels like a burlap sack, your limbs are stiff, and there's an unfamiliar chicken staring at you with the wisdom of someone who's seen too much. You peel yourself off the straw mattress, pat yourself down, and do a quick inventory. Boots still there, if a bit damp. Coin purse, lighter than you remember. Dignity, missing in action. Across the room, your roommates are in varying stages of survival. The merchant is still snoring, hugging a crust of bread like a long-lost friend. The farmer is already up, stretching and muttering about honest work and the world's worst pillow. The chicken hops off the bed with a look that says, "Good luck," and disappears out the door. You stagger downstairs, following the scent of burnt onions and defeat. The common room is a war zone of empty mugs, overturned benches, and a serving maid who's seen enough hangovers to be completely unsympathetic. She slides you a bowl of something that might be porridge, or might be last night's stew in a new disguise. Either way, it's grey, lumpy, and smells faintly of regret. On the side, a slab of bread that could double as a weapon, or if you're feeling brave, as breakfast. There's no coffee, of course. Instead, you're offered a mug of weak ale, which by some miracle of medieval science tastes even more suspicious in the morning. If you're lucky, someone brewed a herbal tea from the weeds out back. It's advertised as a cure for everything from heartbreak to gout, but mostly just tastes like boiled optimism. As you chew your bread, you listen to the morning stories. Every guest has a theory about what really happened last night. Who started the fight, who stole the bard's shoes, why the goat is now wearing a scarf. There are conspiratorial whispers about the mystery meat in the stew and competitive boasting about who found the most bites on their ankles. The innkeeper wanders through, collecting coins and complaints with equal efficiency, pausing only to glare at anyone who suggests the soup was too lively. For some, breakfast is a social event. For others, it's an endurance test. The unlucky ones nurse their hangovers in silence, heads cradled in hands, bargaining with whatever medieval gods might have mercy on their aching skulls. If you made it through the night without offending the cook, the serving maid, or the local wildlife, you're already ahead of the curve. You take a moment to glance outside. The sun is already climbing, casting pale gold across the muddy road and promising a new day full of blisters, rain, and endless possibilities. Your fellow travellers are packing up, exchanging half-hearted goodbyes and promises to meet again at some other inn, in some other town, under some other questionable roof. The farmer grabs a chunk of bread for the road. The bard tunes his lute with one string missing. The chicken, blessed survivor, finds another unsuspecting guest and resumes its campaign for crumbs. By the time you finish your stew, you're already planning your escape. A deep breath, a last swallow, and you brace yourself for whatever waits beyond the inn's battered door. Your medieval adventure continues, hungrier, scratchier, and just a little bit wiser. One thing's for sure, you'll never look at breakfast the same way again, and you'll never take for granted a bed that doesn't come with roommates' claws or existential questions. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Now get back on the road, you gather your things, count your coins, and check for new rashes. If you still have everything you arrived with, including your soul, you're doing better than most. Mourning in a medieval inn is a time of quiet celebration for anyone who has survived the night unscathed, or at least only lightly traumatized. Sunlight slants through the cracks in the wall, illuminating dust motes, stray feathers, and the odd shoe with no owner. The common room is an obstacle course of overturned stools, forgotten cloaks, and travellers in various stages of packing and self-repair. You double-check your boots, because in the medieval inn, footwear is a currency all its own. Shoes tend to migrate during the night, either pilfered by ambitious guests or relocated by the dog, who clearly has a side business running a lost and found. If you still have both boots and they match, congratulations. That's your first win of the day. Next up, inventory management. You open your pack to see what's left. Is your bread still present and at least partially edible? Do you still have your one good shirt, or did it get bartered away for an extra blanket sometime around midnight? Every pouch, satchel and hidden pocket is examined. If you find extra coins you didn't arrive with, best not to ask where they came from. If your purse is lighter, chalk it up to the hospitality fee and move on. Health inspection is next. It's not uncommon to leave a medieval inn with a few more bites and itches than you arrived with. You do a quick scan. No new boils, no suspicious swelling, nothing crawling that shouldn't be. You consider it a draw if the number of rashes hasn't doubled overnight. Now comes the delicate art of settling your bill with the innkeeper, a man whose memory for debts is only rivaled by his lack of patience for haggling. You pay up, maybe slip a coin to the maid if she managed to keep your possessions safe, and attempt a casual exit. If you're a regular, the innkeeper gives you a grunt that could mean anything from safe travels to next time, bring your own spoon. Leaving isn't always as simple as walking out the door. The path to the exit is filled with farewells, some genuine, some just habit. You dodge the bard trying to sell you a farewell song, sidestep the merchant who wants to trade travel tips for a crust of bread, and wave to the farmer who's already halfway out the door whistling for his chicken. There's always a last-minute scramble for missing items, a hat on the mantelpiece, a glove under a bench, or, in one memorable case, a goat stubbornly refusing to let go of someone's scarf. If you're lucky, you'll pass the final inspection, the serving maid's once over, a nod from the handyman, and the dog's hopeful sniff of your bag. This is the medieval equivalent of airport security, just with more livestock and fewer shoes. Before you step out, you take one last look at the place that, for better or worse, sheltered you for the night. Maybe you even feel a pang of nostalgia, quickly suppressed by the memory of the stew and the persistent itch on your left ankle. You nod farewell to the innkeeper, who's already calculating what you might have broken or borrowed. Outside, the air feels fresher, the world bigger. The muddy road beckons. You've survived the medieval inn. Barely. With your boots, your wits, and whatever dignity you didn't leave behind in the straw, you step back into the adventure. You walk away a little itchier, a lot wiser, and with a silent vow. Next time, maybe you'll splurge for the private room, or maybe you'll just sleep in a haystack. Either way, you made it out, and in the Middle Ages that's all anyone can really ask. Congratulations, you've checked out. Soul, shoes, and all. As you step back onto the road, the innkeeper wishes you luck in a tone that suggests you'll need it. You limp away, a little wiser, a lot itchier, and determined never to complain about modern hotels again. The inn's battered door creaks shut behind you with all the ceremony of a rusty drawbridge, and suddenly you're standing in the morning air, blinking in the watery sunlight. Your boots squelch with a mixture of mud, disappointment, and whatever mysterious fluid you picked up in the common room. Each step away from the inn feels like a tiny act of freedom, a small victory for anyone who survived a night in medieval hospitality. You take a deep breath and discover to your delight that the outside world smells less like last week's stew and more like wet grass and possibility. Even the road's mud is a welcome relief after the sticky inn floor. You do a quick inventory, bag, boots, dignity, questionable, and reassure yourself that, yes, you really have made it through the gauntlet. You haven't felt this liberated since you escaped your grandmother's cabbage soup. A glance back reveals the inn in all its glory. Wonky roofline, broken shutters, the faint echo of a rooster who never quite learned the concept of bedtime. A stray dog eyes you with the camaraderie of a fellow survivor, and the resident chicken is already plotting its next con on the incoming guests. The innkeeper stands in the doorway, arms folded, giving you a look that says, farewell, and please don't come back with lice in equal measure. The open road awaits, and with it, a whole fresh set of medieval problems. Your muscles ache in ways you didn't think possible. Your pack is slightly lighter, thanks to the invisible departure tax, and every scratch is a tiny reminder of the straw mattress and its uninvited inhabitants. The prospect of sleeping under the stars, on grass, hay, or even an inconveniently shaped rock, now seems like a luxury resort. The honest truth? Medieval travel is not for the faint of heart or the light of luggage. Rain clouds threaten on the horizon. The path ahead is riddled with potholes, and there's always the looming risk of meeting bandits, wolves, or that one merchant who wants to tell you about his onion barrel escape for the 4th time. But you, brave traveller, have faced the inn and lived. A night in the open sounds less like hardship and more like peace and quiet. You resolve that next time you'll take your chances with a ditch. At least out there, you only have to share space with nature and your own thoughts. No thumping from the attic, no midnight fights over a chicken leg, no surprise rodents investigating your socks. Just the sweet, indifferent embrace of the great outdoors, and a sky that doesn't leak unless it's supposed to. For now, you limp onward, scratching absent-mindedly and promising yourself a future filled with modern marvels. Indoor plumbing, beds that don't bite, and breakfasts that don't fight back. The mud on your boots is a badge of honour. The itch, a souvenir. The memories, equal parts cautionary tale and punchline. Behind you, the medieval inn settles in for another day, ready to welcome the next unsuspecting traveller into its aromatic, chaotic arms. Ahead, the world stretches out, every mile putting a little more distance between you and last night's stew. So keep moving, take comfort in the misery you survived, and remember, every ditch, field and rain-soaked barn is another chance to sleep and another story to tell. Compared to the medieval inn, you might just find the ditch a little cosier. Happy travels, survivor, and may your next mattress be mercifully free of wildlife. The only thing standing between you and a midnight inferno is a smoky fire pit in the common room, and a prayer that nobody knocks over a candle. There are no fire exits, just the knowledge that shouting "fire" will send half the inn leaping out windows, sometimes before putting their boots on. When it comes to fire safety, the medieval inn is less prepared for emergencies, and more hoping for the best since 1297. The place is a veritable tinderbox. Timber beams dry as yesterday's bread, rushes on the floor, and enough draughty cracks for the breeze to feed even the laziest flame. The common room's fireplace doubles as the kitchen, the heater, and the closest thing the inn has to a smoke alarm, which, in this case, is the collective cough of its guests. By day, the fireplace is the social heart of the inn, drawing everyone in with promises of warmth, and the not-so-faint risk of third-degree burns. By night, though, it becomes an ever-present source of anxiety. You watch as flames dance up the chimney, or, on bad nights, billow directly into the room, depending on which way the wind is blowing. The air is always just a shade or two away from campfire in your lungs, and you can barely remember what life was like before everything smelled faintly of smoke. Candles are everywhere, perched on every uneven surface, flickering uncertainly in the drafts. They're made of tallow and optimism, and when they aren't melting in strange, lumpy shapes, they're threatening to tip over at the slightest nudge from an elbow, a chicken or an overexcited bard. The best you can do is keep them out of reach of flammable things, which, in a medieval inn, is basically nothing. There's no fire drill, no water bucket standing by, and certainly no well-marked exits. The only fire safety training anyone receives is the folk wisdom passed down through panicked whispers. If you smell burning, run. Shouting "fire" in a packed inn is the medieval equivalent of hitting the panic button. Half the guests stampede for the nearest window, regardless of what floor they're on, while the other half scramble to rescue their coin purses and favourite hats. In theory, there's a fire hook hanging somewhere, an iron rod used to pull down burning thatch before it can take the whole building. In practice, it's probably been misplaced or is doubling as a curtain rod in the privy. Buckets for water? You might find one if it's not already being used to soak feet, feed a horse, or catch leaks from the roof. For most guests, a good night's sleep means mentally plotting the fastest way out should things get a little too warm. If you're wise, you sleep in your boots, cloak within arm's reach, and dreams, interrupted by the distant memory of that time your cousin set the barn on fire trying to make midnight toast. The staff, to their credit, know the risks all too well. The innkeeper keeps a suspicious eye on every spark, the serving maid snuffs out as many candles as she can without being noticed, and the cook, who remembers 3 separate kitchen fires, has a bucket of sand, just in case. Still, everyone knows that if the place ever does go up, it's every traveller for themselves, and the quickest out the door gets the last laugh, and hopefully their pants. In the morning, if you wake to the smell of smoke and it's only coming from the fireplace, you count yourself lucky. The inn still stands, your eyebrows are intact, and the only thing charred is the bread. You survived another night under a roof held together by hope and a healthy respect for fire. Congratulations. In the medieval inn, that's a win worth celebrating. Tonight's meal selection is simple. Stale bread, stew, and, if you're lucky, a questionable hunk of cheese. The bread could double as a doorstop, and the cheese is strong enough to qualify as a guest. You attempt to bite in, but it's more of a negotiation than a meal. There's a special ritual to dinner in a medieval inn. First, you eye the bread, assessing it for weak points. You might give it a gentle knock on the table. If it echoes, you consider saving it for later, like when you need to defend yourself from bandits, or prop open a window. The word fresh is reserved for things that are still growing, and this bread hasn't been fresh since the last full moon. But you're hungry, so you soldier on. You break off a piece, using both hands and a surprising amount of upper body strength. The resulting crumb storm is impressive, and most of it ends up in your lap. Some guests try soaking their bread in the stew, hoping to soften it enough to risk their teeth. Others just gnaw away, pausing to massage their jaws between bites. If medieval dentistry had Yelp, this bread would have a warning label. Next is the stew, a catch-all dish that changes with the seasons, the weather, and whatever fell into the pot today. Sometimes it's mostly root vegetables, sometimes there's a hint of actual meat, and sometimes it's a mystery best left unsolved. The flavour is equal parts hope and desperation. Every bite is an exercise in faith. You believe you're eating dinner, and you pray it won't return to haunt you in the night. Tonight the stew is thick and hearty, flavoured with onions, garlic, and an herb that might be parsley, or possibly just a weed from the back garden. You fish out a chunk of something that could be turnip, or perhaps the last guest's lost boot. It's hard to tell. Every bowl is a new adventure, with ingredients that are more characterful than appetizing. If you find a bone, you're supposed to make a wish. Just don't wish for more stew. The cheese is the wild card. It arrives with a flourish, often accompanied by a joke from the serving maid and a warning to approach with caution. The outer rind is hard as stone, and the aroma can only be described as assertive. Some cheeses in the medieval inn are older than the innkeeper's sense of humour, and almost as sharp. You take a tentative nibble, bracing yourself. It's strong, tangy, and possibly moving. There's a reason cheese is stored on the higher shelf. It's a deterrent for pests and sometimes guests. In this inn, food is less about satisfaction and more about survival. Guests swap techniques for making bread edible, soaking it, scraping off the worst bits, or simply pretending it's a very chewy biscuit. Some claim to have lost a tooth, others insist it put hair on their chest. The true veterans don't bother complaining. They eat, nod, and quietly appreciate the calories. Despite the rustic fare, the communal spirit is strong. Around the table you find laughter, stories, and the kind of camaraderie that comes only from facing adversity with your stomach and sense of humour intact. Someone starts a contest to see who can throw a chunk of bread the farthest. The record stands at almost hit the bard. Others share their cheese with the dog, who eats it without hesitation, proving medieval animals are the bravest of all. By the end of the meal you're full, if not with food, then with the sheer experience of having eaten it. You look at the bread, the stew, the cheese, and realise that, in its own bizarre way, it's exactly what you came for. A taste of history, a test of endurance, and a story you'll be telling for years to come. Sleep well, traveller, and if you have any bread left, keep it handy. You never know when you'll need a midnight snack or a blunt instrument. You ask about a private room, and the innkeeper laughs so hard he nearly drops his ladle. If you do get a private space, it's usually a broom closet with a door that doesn't shut, and a mysterious puddle in the corner. It's you, your thoughts, and at least 2 rats who refuse to split the rent. For those with a little extra coin and a lot of misplaced optimism, the quest for privacy in a medieval inn is like searching for a unicorn in a haystack. Private rooms are technically available, but the definition is flexible. You might find yourself tucked behind a curtain, squeezed into a storage alcove, or even promoted to the prestigious owner's room, conveniently located between the common room and the privy. If you're especially lucky, you get 4 actual walls, a door that closes with some encouragement, and a window that lets in both fresh air and the constant threat of pigeons. The first thing you notice about your private room is the size. Cozy doesn't begin to cover it. If you can stretch your arms out without touching both walls at once, you're either a child or you accidentally wandered into the stables. Your bed is slightly smaller than the one in the common room, which is impressive considering it was already about the width of a cheese wheel. The mattress is the same time-hardened straw, only more compressed from years of solitary guests tossing and turning in existential despair. The furniture is minimalist. 1 rickety stool, a warped table stained with ancient mysteries, and a single candle stub clinging to a holder with all the dignity of a melted snowman. You inspect the corners and find the room's previous occupants. 2 rats, a family of spiders, and a draught so powerful it's been given a name by the locals. The mysterious puddle in the corner is never addressed. It simply exists, a silent roommate with unclear motives and an unbreakable lease. Privacy, as it turns out, is an illusion. The thin door swings open if you so much as breathe too heavily, and there's always at least 1 knothole in the wood that gives passers-by a glimpse of your highly exclusive misery. Every sound from the common room seeps through the walls: laughter, snoring, the muffled clang of a bard being politely ejected, and the comforting wail of someone discovering a chicken in their bed. Still, there's a peculiar sense of luxury. For the first time since you arrived, you can sit in silence and contemplate your life choices. You don't have to share your bed with a merchant, a farmer, or a wandering chicken. You can lay out your possessions, what's left of them, without fear of immediate theft. For a few blissful moments, it's just you, your thoughts, and the echo of a rat gnawing quietly under the floorboards. Sleep in the private room is different too. You're not battling elbows for territory or negotiating blanket rights with strangers, but you are at war with your imagination. Every squeak becomes suspicious, every draft a possible omen, and every shadow seems to stretch a little too far. If you're brave, you'll fall asleep to the gentle lullaby of the building settling and the rats settling in. In the morning you emerge from your broom closet, hair wild, eyes wide, but with the air of someone who survived something significant. The other guests nod in grudging respect, or perhaps just relief that you didn't demand a refund. You return the room's single key, or splintered stick, brush the straw from your clothes, and step back into the controlled chaos of the inn's main hall. A private room in a medieval inn isn't glamorous. It isn't even comfortable. But it is, for one fleeting night, yours. And in the Middle Ages, that's the real VIP experience. Arguments in the common room escalate quickly, usually over spilled ale, accusations of cheating at dice, or who gets the least lumpy corner of the bench. Soon enough, a friendly disagreement turns into a medieval WWE event, with chairs flying and onlookers cheering from a safe distance. The medieval inn is nothing if not democratic. Everyone gets a say, a seat, and a chance to take offence at the tiniest provocation. It starts innocently enough, a rolled eye, a muttered insult, a suspicious glance at a pair of loaded dice. But as the night wears on and the ale flows like water, mostly because it's safer than the water, tensions simmer just below the surface, waiting for the right moment to bubble over. Tonight, the catalyst is simple. Someone knocks over a mug of ale, drenching a merchant's best tunic and setting off a chain reaction of offended gasps. The merchant accuses the nearest peasant of sabotage. The peasant blames the draughty window, and the draughty window just keeps doing its thing. A debate begins, punctuated by wild gestures, increasingly creative insults, and a few offers to step outside and settle this like honest folk. Nobody actually wants to step outside. It's cold, and frankly the lighting is much better near the fire. Inevitably, someone stands up a little too fast, a bench tips over, and suddenly it's less of an argument and more of a full-fledged taproom duel. Chairs become weapons of choice, prized for their reach, heft, and the fact that the innkeeper can always build more out of firewood tomorrow. The brawlers circle each other, brandishing stools like medieval gladiators. The onlookers, seasoned veterans of many a furniture-based skirmish, scoot their mugs and stew to a safe distance and settle in for the show. The rules are unspoken but well understood. No hitting below the belt, no spilling more ale than necessary, and above all no damage to the fireplace, unless you're prepared to explain yourself to the innkeeper's glare of doom. The first chair usually shatters on impact, sending a cloud of ancient sawdust into the air and earning a raucous cheer from the audience. The local bard provides a running commentary, sometimes to the beat of his own head thumping the tabletop. Occasionally, the fight takes an unexpected turn. Someone deploys the ultimate weapon, a hunk of yesterday's bread, tossed with alarming accuracy. Others leap onto the tables, brandishing spoons, tankards, or the inn's only intact candlestick. The serving maid weaves through the chaos with the elegance of a seasoned professional, collecting empty bowls and offering encouragement. Try not to bleed on the floor this time. The taproom duel is as much about theatre as it is about settling scores. Old rivalries are aired, new legends are born, and every guest gets a little story to take on the road. Even the innkeeper, who will grumble about repairs in the morning, secretly enjoys the spectacle, especially if the fight distracts from the state of the stew. Eventually the combatants tire, someone calls for a round on the house, and the crowd applauds the participants for their courage, stamina, and refusal to let go of the last decent cushion. The loser slumps into a corner. The victor is crowned with the remains of a bar stool, and everyone agrees to be friends, at least until the next dice game goes south. As you watch the aftermath, splintered chairs, dented pride, and a few heroic bruises, you can't help but marvel at the sheer resilience of medieval inn furniture. And as the night settles back into laughter and low conversation, you drift off with the comforting thought that here, disputes are settled quickly, chairs are always in demand, and the real winner is the one who can still sit down at breakfast. Sleep well and keep your wits about you. Tomorrow night, you might just be the one defending your corner of the bench, with or without a chair. Feeling peckish in the night, you ask for a snack and get a blank stare or a handful of dried peas. Room service is someone's youngest child sent up with cold stew and a promise not to spit in it. If you want anything else, you'd better bring it yourself, or grow it in the mattress. In the modern world, you're spoiled for choice. Midnight pizzas, pancakes delivered to your pillow, even a little chocolate on your turned-down sheets. The medieval inn, however, has never heard of turned-down service, unless you count the look the innkeeper gives you when you ask for anything after sunset. The kitchen is closed, the cook is asleep. The only thing open is the front door, and that's just so the cat can wander in and out. Your first attempt at ordering a snack is met with confusion. Food, the innkeeper repeats, as if you've requested a flying horse. At this hour? He sighs and dispatches the youngest child, a sleepy figure with suspiciously sticky hands, to rummage through the kitchen. 5 minutes later they return, proudly clutching a handful of shriveled peas and a chunk of bread hard enough to chisel your initials into. You accept it with the grace of someone who knows this is as good as it gets. For the truly desperate, there's always the stew, eternal, omnipresent, and just as mysterious at midnight as it was at dinner. If you're lucky, it's merely cold. If you're not, you spend the next hour chewing thoughtfully and trying not to imagine what might have joined the pot after dark. The serving child assures you there's probably no spiders this time, and you decide it's best not to ask about last time. As for beverages, your options are limited to a mug of water drawn from the rain barrel, complete with authentic medieval floaties, or a dregs of ale that's grown more tangy since sunset. The idea of tea, coffee, or a splash of milk for your nightcap is so foreign that the staff would sooner bring you a live chicken. Need a pillow, an extra blanket, or perhaps a candle to chase away the night's shadows? Good luck. Room service means you're handed whatever's left over from the day, usually a threadbare cloth, a stub of candle that smells like old bacon, and a polite reminder not to set anything on fire. If you ask for more, you'll get a crash course in the art of medieval negotiation. Offer a coin, barter with a story, or, if all else fails, try to look so pitiful that the serving maid relents just enough to fetch you a scrap from her own bed. If you were wise, you'd have planned ahead. Experienced travellers know to stash an apple in their bag, a lump of cheese in a pocket, or even a piece of salted meat tucked into their boot. Rumour has it the real luxury suite in a medieval inn is the one where you've brought your own food and a strong jaw to eat it. Despite the sparse offerings, there's a strange camaraderie to be found in the late-night scrounging. You share your peas with a fellow guest, swap stories about the worst snacks you've ever eaten, and, if you're lucky, laugh about the time the innkeeper's son tried to charge you extra for a bread crust shaped vaguely like a sheep. The silence of the night is broken only by the soft crunch of questionable bread, and the distant sound of the rat under your bed, enjoying a midnight feast of his own. In the end, you drift off to sleep with your hunger slightly dulled, your expectations lowered, and your sense of adventure thoroughly tested. Tomorrow you'll rise early, determined to eat a proper meal, or failing that, to sneak a few bites before the cook realises what's missing. So tuck yourself in, brave traveller. In the medieval inn, room service is a luxury best left to the imagination. So, you've survived a night, barely, in the medieval inn. You've braved the itch of a straw mattress, the mysterious stew, and the symphony of snores, rats, and questionable bards. You lost count of the number of times you checked your boots, and your coin purse is slightly lighter than when you arrived. Your dignity, well, that's up for debate. But if you've made it through a single night in a medieval inn, you've earned more than a headache and some flea bites. You've witnessed the stubborn, absurd resilience of people who made it work with nothing but determination, humour, and the world's worst breakfast menu. You've seen how strangers, livestock and travelling salesmen all squeezed into the same smoky room, hoping for warmth, safety, and maybe a story worth retelling on the next muddy road. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into a clean bed with soft sheets, reliable locks, and the beautiful silence of central heating, maybe send a quiet thank you to the survivors of history, the folks who endured drafty rooms, haunted privies, and stew that doubled as a dare. Remember, even on your worst travel day, you're probably doing better than someone who had to wrestle a weasel for pillow space. Because history is equal parts struggle and hilarity. It's proof that people are stubborn, hopeful, and a little bit ridiculous. The next time you worry about a slow Wi-Fi connection or an underwhelming hotel breakfast, just remember, you could be waking up in 1374 with a goat in your bed and a hangover you can't explain. Sleep well. Dream of gentle bards and quieter inns. And remember, no matter how rough your day, at least your room doesn't come with a complimentary side of lice. Good night, and thanks for listening.